Questions for Coach?
James. My name's Ben.
Hey James, what kind of progress have you made this spring compared to what your expectations were? And are there any areas where maybe you didn't think you got as much as you hoped to?
Yeah, I think right about where I thought you're asking me after a good practice. I thought we had a good practice today on both sides, competitive, energy. I thought that was good. I think we're about where I thought we would be. We had a big question mark with the specialists. Feel good about the long snapper, feel good about the punting competition, feel good about the field goal competition. So that's been good. I think there's still some question marks in terms of depth at D tackle that we got to get resolved there. And then I still think there's still a question mark at wideout. Who's going to be the third wideout? That's still pretty open competition with a number of guys competing for the job, and then some talent still coming in.
Some of those guys that are competing for that number 3 spot.
What's that?
Who are some of those guys that are competing?
The rest of the wideouts.
Oh, the rest of them. Okay. Is there anyone that has stood out as of late to you?
Yeah, Keandre and Trey.
Coach, the Big Ten is hiring, has named a new commissioner. I'm just curious what kind of relationship coaches have with the commissioner's office and the commissioners.
Yeah, according to Chris, I don't think they've named one yet. There's speculation out there, so I'm not going to get into speculation at this point.
But just as far as your relationship with that office.
Yeah, I think, obviously we have meetings a couple times a year where the commissioner's office and the coaches, specifically the football coaches and athletic directors, get together and have a lot of discussion. I've been a part of those discussions in the SEC as a head coach. I've been a part of those discussions in the Big Ten. So yeah, I think it's a healthy relationship. I think it's an important relationship that the administrators hear from the practitioners. I think that's really important when we're trying to fight for legislation with the NCAA or with the Big Ten or whatever we think is in the best interest of college football or college athletics in general. But I think it's an important relationship.
Are you still anticipating the normal kind of original spring game setup? You had said you hope that you'd have enough. Is that the plan for Saturday?
That's the plan.
How do you think
We were going to do the. You remember when we did the punt catching? Were you here? Were you
Oh,
part?
the media, yeah.
Were you
We
part
had to
of that?
sign away our liability, our rights. No, I was working for it. Yeah. That's on. That's on. Maybe.
Guess who's first on the list?
Tyler.
No.
How's the offensive line cross training been? I know you talked about that, wanting to get some guys versatility and reps in different positions. How do you feel that's gone, and where's the benefit for guys when they're doing this?
Yeah, I think it's good. I think it has been valuable this spring for multiple reasons to see who are the guys that we think can do it and take on that extra responsibility. But there's also value in who are the guys that can't do it, that need to focus on one position, whether it's outside or inside or whether it's right or left. I think there's a ton of value really in both ends of the spectrum on that. What it does is it allows us, say if we're in a situation, say you have a 10 deep on the offensive line, then that's perfect, great. But if you don't, and say your 6th and 7th linemen are better, clearly better than your 8th, 9th, and 10th, then hopefully you're in a situation where the 6th guy can go in at multiple spots and the 7th guy can go in at multiple spots. So it's let's get the next best guy on the field. So we'll see. We got some time there. I do think we have a chance to have 9 or 10 guys, but we'll see how that plays out. And then the other part for that is, okay, maybe that next best lineman, his best position is at right tackle. So then you have the flexibility to take the right tackle and move to the left tackle or whatever it may be. So we'll see how that plays out.
Hey James, Terry's the last one from the original staff. How important is that longevity? What does he bring to that table as far as perspective? And then he has the associate head coach title. What does that entail?
Yeah, I think, obviously you're exactly right from a coach's perspective. We still have a fairly good nucleus of guys, the strength staff and the administrative staff and things like that. But yeah, I think, as you guys have heard me say, it's harder than it's ever been in college football. It's harder than it's ever been with some of the new rules in college football that some coaches are leaving for the NFL. You see it all over the country. I know a lot of times we just focus on Penn State, but it's happening everywhere. So when you get a guy like Terry that you can get on staff, and he's been highly productive, he's got great perspective not only to the game of football but specifically Penn State from a historical perspective as well as what we've done in the last 10 years. There's a ton of value in that. Whether it's the seniors that have been with them since their freshman year, whether it's recruiting Western PA and specifically Pittsburgh, he's been phenomenal, and he really has. He's been invaluable for us on the staff. I think he's got great perspective. He's also not a yes man. You ask him a question, you're going to get an answer, and for me, I value that. I think a lot of times people in leadership positions say they want that, but then they get in the leadership position and they don't necessarily like that. Terry's going to tell you his opinion, which for me, in this role, ultimately I got to make the decision at the end of the day, but I can't make a great decision unless I've heard from the players that have earned that voice, and then the same thing for the staff. So he's been awesome, and he's continued to be a consistent leader within our program and an ambassador outside of our program.
You had several true freshmen, Singleton, Abdul, Katron, that made big impacts a year ago. What's their growth been like this spring?
Yeah, obviously, you guys know as well as I do, those guys had huge years. So what you're trying to do is do everything you possibly can that they can take a step from year one. And you'd love it to be as pronounced as maybe a guy that redshirted, or a guy that played a complementary role, backup role, and only got a few reps a game. I think everybody would be excited, obviously, fans, media, and everybody else, if those two guys, as productive as they were last year, if they could take a significant step this year. And I think they can. They've approached things the right way. They're obviously bigger, stronger, and faster than they were a year ago. Not only are they faster out here running 40s, but they're faster in terms of understanding the playbook, understanding college defenses and schemes. So they won't be thinking as much this year. They've been in the same system now for 2 years. So I think there'll be value coming from that. I also think we'll be improved on the offensive line. And I think we'll be similar, if not improved, at tight end. So I think those things I think will help us. The other thing is wide receiver. That's why that third wide receiver is important, because if we have people on the outside that people are scared of, obviously it changes how you defend us.
There's a pretty public, I would say, ongoing dialogue about what kind of athletic department Penn State wants to be on the facilities and NIL front. What are the ramifications of not staying up to pace with what you want to be? And is there a point where too much water has gone under the bridge to really ever catch up?
Great question. I don't think it really should be a discussion. I don't think it really can be a discussion, because when you're Penn State and you're in the Big Ten, the reality is if you choose and want to compete at the very highest level, you guys have heard me say this before, you can't pick and choose what you're going to compete in. I think the other thing is, you guys remember, this discussion is very similar to a discussion we had 10 years ago when I was talking about facilities and people were looking at me like I was crazy. And the reality is, the people that were aggressive on the front end with facilities, then obviously they're able to shift their focus to the new challenge. So the reality is, as you guys have heard me before, whether it's facility, whether it's staff size, whether it's alignment, whether it's NIL, whether it's all these things, if you truly want to compete at the highest level, then you can't say we're going to be competitive in these three areas and not in this one. Where we are as a top 10 program, those areas that you are behind become glaring, obvious issues to people that really understand and study college football and college athletics. So I think your point is a good one. That's why I'm very pleased that over the last couple of years we've been able to make significant impact in recruiting. You hear people talk all the time, in facilities, and you hear recruits talk about it all the time, the impact that it's had. I think about last year, our weight room was in here. You know, what we're going to be able to get done in the off season with this weight room and this indoor facility, it has an impact. I remember Bob White talking about the year they won the national championship. I think it was '86. Mike, you may know better than me, but they had the indoor facility. They were one of the only programs in the country that had an indoor facility at the time, and they were able to practice that entire period in the indoor facility. And Bob talked about having a big impact on the national championship. When it's interesting when some of the storylines have been, well, we didn't have these things in the past. Well, we really did. That football facility was the best facility in all of football. College teams from all over the country, NFL teams came to visit it. So I don't know where that storyline came from, but it's not accurate. So we've made significant ground up in the last year, but again, we got to keep the pedal to the floor. I think we obviously just saw, some decisions that weren't completely made, in the basketball program, but that was a big part of it. We know that.
Do you feel like NIL, you guys are in a good spot football-wise with it, or what? Because you just alluded to other things that you all need.
Yeah, we still got a ton of work to do. We started out the first couple of years where we said we were going to teach student athletes how to be entrepreneurs. That was our NIL model. So we were 2 years behind everybody else. I think over the last year we've made significant progress. But if you give somebody a 2-year start in basically a 3-year model, I think it's pretty obvious. But what I've been doing is, instead of talking to you guys about it, we've been working to try to solve it, as much as we possibly can, by going out and educating the fan base and the donors about what we're truly competing against. And as you guys know, I spend a ton of time studying best practice. I think I got a pretty good pulse and understanding of what's happening, talking to ADs, talking to other coaches, talking to people. One of the most valuable things is the people we hire from outside. So you know exactly what they're doing and what you're competing against.
James, what have Khalil and Jerry gained at tight end from the work this spring, and what have you learned about Joey and Barnwell along the way?
Yeah, I think that position, you could make the argument, is probably the biggest transition, obviously taking quarterback out of it. I think you could make the argument tight end is probably the biggest transition for guys to make from high school to college. And the reason I say that is most high school tight ends never block. So they go from being big receivers to trying to block deny, and some of these guys are trying to do it when they should still be in high school, badminton gym class or whatever it may be. So it is a challenge, it is growing pains. But we try to challenge these guys, because the reality is West Virginia won't feel sorry for us if one of those guys are on the field, and they came here for a reason. So they'll be way ahead come summer camp in the fall by going through it, but it's not a whole lot of fun for them right now. It's like they've been dropped on another planet.
And how about the two vets though, with Khalil and Jerry? Sorry if you didn't hear that.
Yeah, I don't know if I would consider Jerry a veteran, because he missed all of last year. He was in the program, but missed all of last year with an injury. But Khalil's really done some nice things and taken some strides. Like a lot of inexperienced players, he's got to be more consistent. He does some great things one day or one play, and there's other days where he's not as consistent as he needs to be. But he's got a ton of potential and a ton of talent. I'm proud of him. He's come a long way in the last year, but we need him to continue to grow, because we had 3 really good tight ends last year. We need to make sure we have 3 really good tight ends this year.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.